You always more into hip hop and street.
No, I was. I mean, I was into everything. I mean, I grew up on hip hop, but when you know, it's funny when you talk about grow up. I mean, you're talking about a very small period of time in a long career. You know, that fundamental 2 years when you're 12 to 14 being that was your kind of elitist moment. Yeah. And from then it was acid house. It was, then going into, the whole sort of rave era, I suppose, and so I've known people like and seen people like Carl Cox since I was 14 years old. Sasha, people like that. I mean, they were the kind of part of my culture. Fabio, Groove Rider, through to Giles Peterson, through to Tim Westwood. But the people that really inspired me to want to do what I did were people like Soul to Soul, The Wild Bunch, DJ Red Alert, Tim Westwood. It came from more of a hip hop culture, but really house music hadn't quite found its voice in Europe at that time. And it started really coming through like 80, 87, 88 was really when it started happening. And, I was listening to hip hop since I was, 8, 9 years old. So, I have always loved, a very, that was what I always felt was great about working with Giles Peterson when I did, was that we were able to play such an eclectic array of music, which didn't really exist in anywhere else in club culture at that time, So we were playing, when we were doing Bar Rumba and it was the kind of beginning of Mowax, you'd be playing DJ Shadow, you'd be playing Josh Wink, Higher State of Consciousness, you'd be playing Carl Craig, Richie Hawtin, and you'd also be playing Etta James and Terry Callier and John Coltrane. So
the mix was so unique for Mowax.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
and that came across in what we did with the label and working with a record like Le Funk Mob, which was a Parisian pre sort of Daft Punk house sound that came out of Paris. But then you also had Carl Craig and Richie Hawtin remixing.
It was in a period when you could blindly buy anything from Mowax.
Yeah.
And every once in a while you have a label that pops up and has that.
Yeah.
But they always disappear.
Yeah, I think I've been trying to think about why, and losing the death of Mowax was a very sad, heavy, traumatic experience for me, and in many ways I just walked away because I couldn't deal with it. But I think in retrospect I kind of look at it like a band, really. And I think a lot of those labels are like bands. And unless you're prepared to then take it to the next step where you want to become a commercial entity which doesn't really necessarily stand for a specific taste, then it tends to reach a plateau. And the band splits up, once I'm not working with Shadow and Tim's gone to do DFA and all these things had split up, it kind of was like the band had split up,
The story was that you find on the web is DJ Shadow quit because you guys weren't successful enough?
I've not heard that, but don't believe everything you read.
No, of course.
I mean,
you're here.
I think we split up because he wanted to pursue his route, his journey, and I think that it is sometimes like when you work with artists from the beginning of their careers, they tend to want to leave home. And I think that's what happened with Shadow. He wanted to leave home.
But didn't the same apply to you? I mean, you wanted to pursue
your own. I never wanted it to stop. I didn't want anybody to leave home. It was
your home.
I was a responsible parent, goddammit.
It was your home.
It was my home, But it's a fucked up business, man. It's ego. It's there's. I mean, ego, I think women and ego, or maybe if you're a female singer, boyfriends, but generally women and ego and drugs and the lifestyle and all of these things have can have a detrimental effect. But they can also, what goes from being something really exciting, I keep holding this CD like I'm really promoting it everywhere, but what goes from being something which is part of the fun and part of the connection and all those things can then become the destructive element. And I think that it is also in the way that you have, as you get older in life, it is a classic analogy that you start counting your friends on your fingers, and when you start in life, everything's, it's a much, your social environment, your relationships are very different, and relationships are, a good relationship is hard to have for a long period of time, and I think you have to accept that, and I take joy that I think that a lot of the people that I have worked with who have been associated to, whether it's Mowax or Uncle, I'm fortunate I've worked with them at the best points of their career. Yeah. He says, totally knocking it in there.
Hey, talking about drugs, Heavy Drug is, you only left like 2 minutes on this album, though there were like 5 remixes lasting each 10 minutes long.
No. Well, there was a kind of original more, it was more of a dance track that we did, and didn't really fit into the mold of the album. And I wanted to write it as a song, and there's actually an 8-minute version of it, but the album kind of had to be. There was a few things that needed to be changed, and that was one of the tracks that we edited down. And at some point, I'll probably put out the full version.